Picture yourself casting nets into Pike's turbulent waters, where even the sea salt has an attitude and every wave thinks it owns the place. Welcome to Whispered Sleep Sagas, where starlit tales unravel into dreams. Dim the lights, nestle into your coziest spot, exhale your cares, sink into softness, and let tonight's story, gentler than a hobbit's nap, carry you to sleep's cozy embrace. If this tale lulled you toward dreams, or made you chuckle like a kraken, tickling your toes, give it a like and subscribe. No pressure. My ego's as sturdy as an Iron Islander's stomach in rough seas, but your support keeps the firelit stories burning. The Iron Islands rise from the sunset sea like jagged teeth, gnawing at the horizon with a persistence that would make even the most stubborn goat seem reasonable. These rocky bastions have weathered 10,000 storms, each one carving new lines into their already weathered faces, and still they stand, defiant, proud, and utterly unimpressed by the mainland's soft concerns about comfort and warmth. Pike, the great seat of House Greyjoy, looms above the churning waters like a stone giant that's given up on standing straight, but refuses to fall down. Its towers lean at angles that would make any sensible architect weep, connected by bridges that sway in the salt wind, like the island's way of testing you whether you really want to cross badly enough. The castle's foundations disappear into the sea spray below, where the waves crash against black rocks with the rhythm of a heartbeat, assuming that heart belongs to something very large, very angry, and very wet. You are Torrin Saltbeard, though the beard part of your name is more hopeful prophecy than current reality, sprouting from your chin in patches like seaweed clinging to a rock after the tide goes out. Your hands are mapped with scars from fishing lines and fish hooks, each one a small lesson in why the sea demands respect and why you should probably pay more attention when handling sharp things in rough weather. Your skin has been kissed by salt spray so many times it's practically been proposed to, taking on that particular weathered quality that marks all Iron Islanders, part tan, part burn, part resignation to the fact that moisturizer is a foreign concept here. The morning begins as it always does on the Iron Islands, with the dawn breaking over the water, like a reluctant guest arriving at a party they didn't want to attend. The sun peers through the constant haze of sea mist and spray, painting the sky in shades of grey that have more variety than the Meisters have names for. You wake in your small stone cottage, perched on a cliff that's been arguing with the sea for centuries and shows no signs of backing down. Your home is modest but sturdy, built from the same black stone that forms the backbone of the islands. The walls are thick enough to muffle the constant sound of wind and waves, though nothing short of divine intervention could silence them completely. Small windows, more like arrow slits than proper openings, let in enough light to see by while keeping out the worst of the weather. The Ironborn learned long ago that large windows are just the sea's way of inviting itself inside for an unannounced visit. You stretch, feeling your joints crack like the timbers of an old ship, and pad to the window to check the weather. Outside, the sea stretches endlessly in all directions, its surface textured like hammered pewter under the grey sky. The waves roll in from the deep ocean with the patience of something that knows it has eternity to wear down whatever stands in its way. Today, mercifully, the swells look manageable, not the ship-swallowing monsters that keep fishing boats tied to their moorings, but not the glassy calm that makes the old salts shake their heads and mutter about unnatural stillness either. The Iron Islands have bred a particular kind of person, shaped by salt and stone, and the understanding that the sea gives and takes according to its own mysterious accounting. The Ironborn call themselves the Salt Sons and Daughters, children of the sea, god known as the Drowned God, whose halls beneath the waves are said to be more magnificent than any castle built on dry land. What is dead may never die, but rises again, harder and stronger, goes their ancient motto. And while you've never been particularly religious, there's something about hauling nets in a storm that makes a man consider the wisdom of staying on the Drowned God's good side. Your fishing boat, the Stubborn Lass, waits at the small harbour below, bobbing at her mooring like an eager dog waiting for a walk. She's not the prettiest vessel ever to grace these waters. Her hull bears the scars of countless encounters with rocks that appeared suddenly in rough weather, and her sail has been patched so many times it looks like a quilt made by someone with strong opinions about the colour brown. But she's seaworthy and reliable, which in the Iron Islands counts for more than beauty any day. You dress in layers, the Iron Islanders' eternal battle against the elements. First comes the rough-spun undershirt, worn soft by countless washings in seawater and blessed indifference to fashion. Over that, a wool tunic dyed the deep blue-green of deep water, practical and dark enough to hide the inevitable stains that come from wrestling with fish, nets, and the general mess that is maritime life. Your breeches are leather, supple from wear and waterproofed with seal fat, a process that makes you smell like something that died in a tide pool, but keeps the cold water out when you're knee-deep in the surf. The boots are perhaps the most important part of your outfit. Thick leather with soles worn into the perfect shape of your feet and treaded deeply enough to grip wet rocks. Many a good fisherman has been claimed by the sea not through storm or monster, but by the simple act of slipping on wet stone at exactly the wrong moment. Your boots have saved your life more times than you can count, though they've also tried to drown you on at least 3 occasions when they got caught in fishing nets underwater. Breakfast is simple but filling. Salted fish, dark bread that could probably survive a siege, and strong ale that tastes like it was brewed by someone who thought subtle flavours were for southerners. The fish is cod, caught yesterday and preserved in the salt that seems to coat everything on the islands. It's not fancy, but it provides the kind of lasting energy needed for a day of hauling nets and fighting the sea for your livelihood. As you eat, you plan the day's work. The tides are right for the deep fishing grounds, where the sea floor drops away into mysterious depths and the fish grow large and bold. It's riskier than staying close to shore, but the rewards are worth it. Assuming the sea is in a generous mood and the fish are feeling cooperative. 2 assumptions that have made fools of wiser men than yourself. You gather your gear with the methodical care of someone who knows that forgetting the right tool can mean the difference between a successful day and a hungry night. The nets come first, heavy things woven from hemp and treated with tar to resist the rot that claims all things in the salt air. You check each section for tears or weak spots, running your fingers along the mesh with the unconscious skill of long practice. A torn net is worse than no net at all. It gives you false hope, right up until the moment your catch swims away through the hole you missed. The hooks and lines are next, each one inspected and tested. Iron hooks forged in the castle's smithy, sharp enough to pierce tough fish mouths, but strong enough not to bend under the strain of a large catch, fighting for its life. The lines are cord spun from hemp and sinew, flexible but strong, treated with beeswax to help them slide through the water smoothly. Your tackle box contains the accumulated wisdom of years spent studying what fish like to eat and when they like to eat it. Bits of bright metal that catch the light underwater, pieces of colored shell that mimic the small creatures fish hunt, and strips of cloth that move in the current like seaweed or small fish. Some fishermen swear by complex theories about what attracts fish on any given day, consulting the moon phases and water temperature and the color of the sky at dawn. You've found that fish are fundamentally unpredictable creatures with their own opinions about what looks tasty, and the best strategy is to be prepared for their changing moods. The walk down to the harbor takes you along a path worn smooth by generations of fishermen making the same journey. The stone steps are slick with spray and treacherous in wet weather, but your feet know every irregularity and danger spot. The harbor is small but well protected, carved into a natural cove where the cliffs provide shelter from the worst of the weather. Other boats are already preparing to leave, their crews moving with the efficient bustle of people who know their business. You exchange nods and brief words with your fellow fishermen. Jorik Ironhooks, whose grandfather supposedly caught a kraken once, but probably didn't. Mara Sole Daughter, who can read the weather better than any Meister, and isn't shy about sharing her predictions. An old Ballon net mender, whose fingers are so gnarled with age they look like driftwood, but who can still repair a torn net faster than men half his age. Morning, Torrin, calls Mara as she loads supplies into her boat, the Sea Witch. Water's got that look today. Could be good fishing, could be a wet day for nothing. But the gulls are diving deep, and that usually means something stirring down below. You nod, appreciating the insight. Mara has been fishing these waters longer than you've been alive, and her weather sense has saved more than one crew from dangerous storms. The gulls are indeed active, wheeling and diving with a focused intensity that means they've found schools of small fish, which usually means larger fish aren't far behind. The stubborn lass welcomes you aboard with a familiar creak of well-seasoned wood. She's not large, perhaps 20 feet from bow to stern, but every inch is put to good use. The hold is designed to keep fish fresh with layers of seaweed and salt, while the deck provides enough space to work the nets without tripping over equipment. Her single sail bears the faded image of a kraken, painted years ago by a crew member who had more enthusiasm than artistic skill. It looks more like a confused octopus having an identity crisis, but it's yours, and you've grown fond of it. You cast off the mooring lines and push away from the dock, feeling the familiar sensation of the boat coming alive beneath your feet as she meets the open water. The sail fills with the morning breeze, and the stubborn lass begins her steady progress toward the fishing grounds. The harbor falls away behind you, and soon there's nothing but water in all directions, the islands reduced to dark smudges on the horizon. The sea around the Iron Islands is unlike the waters anywhere else in the known world. Here, the deep ocean currents meet the shallow coastal waters in a complex dance that creates conditions perfect for fish, but challenging for fishermen. The water changes color as you travel, from the green-black of the shallows near shore to the deep blue-purple of the open ocean. Schools of small fish create silver streaks beneath the surface, visible from above as they move in perfect coordination, turning and wheeling like a single living thing. You've been working these waters for 15 years, ever since you were old enough to handle a fishing line without immediately tangling yourself in it, and you still discover new things about them. Hidden currents that appear and disappear with the seasons, underwater rocks that seem to move when you're not looking, and fishing spots that produce abundant catches one day and nothing but empty nets the next. The sea keeps its secrets jealously, revealing them only to those patient enough to pay attention and stubborn enough to keep trying when the easy answers don't work. Your first stop is a spot you call the Widow's Garden, though you've never shared that name with anyone else. It's an area where an underwater ridge creates an upwelling of nutrient-rich water from the depths, and the abundance of small organisms draws fish from miles around. The water here has a particular quality to it, slightly warmer than the surrounding sea, and with a greenish tint that speaks of life teeming just beneath the surface. You drop anchor and prepare your nets, working with the smooth efficiency of long practice. The net goes over the side like a spreading web, sinking into the green-tinted water until it disappears from sight. Now comes the waiting, the part of fishing that separates the patient from the impatient and the successful from the hungry. You settle back against the boat's rail and let your eyes roam across the water, reading the subtle signs that tell stories of what's happening beneath the surface. The wind carries the scent of the deep ocean, a clean smell like rain on stone, mixed with the faint saltiness that is the sea's signature everywhere. Seabirds wheel overhead, their cries adding a wild music to the whisper of wind through the rigging. A few bold gulls perch on the mast, eyeing your tackle box with a calculating look of professional thieves sizing up a potential score. After what feels like the right amount of time, fishing is more art than science, and timing comes from experience rather than clocks. You begin hauling in the net. The weight tells you immediately that you've had some success. The net pulls back with the satisfying resistance of something full. Hand over hand, you bring in the catch, your muscles working in the rhythm they've learned over years of practice. The net breaks the surface with a splash, and you see the silver flash of fish within the mesh. A good catch, several dozen fish of various sizes, from small sardines that will make good bait to larger cod that will feed families. You empty the net into the boat's hold, sorting the catch with practiced eyes. The larger fish go into one section, packed in salt and seaweed to keep them fresh. The smaller ones go into another area where they'll stay alive in seawater until you need them for bait. One fish in particular catches your attention, a large sea bass with scales that shimmer like polished silver and eyes that seem to hold more intelligence than fish usually possess. It's easily the largest fish you've caught this season, big enough to command a good price at market or provide several meals for your own table. You hold it up, admiring its perfect proportions and the way the light plays across its scales. You're a beauty, you tell the fish, which regards you with the stoic dignity of something that knows its fate, but maintains its composure anyway. Sorry about this, but a man's gotta eat. The next few hours pass in the comfortable rhythm of successful fishing. You move from spot to spot, following the subtle signs that indicate where fish might be feeding. Changes in watercolor, patterns of bird activity, the occasional flash of silver just beneath the surface. Each location has its own character and challenges. From rocky areas where you have to be careful not to snag your nets to deeper waters where the fish are larger but more wary. At one point, you're hauling in a net when you notice something unusual in the water nearby. A patch of sea that seems to glow faintly, as if lit from beneath by some underwater source. You've heard the old stories about the drowned god's halls beneath the waves, where eternal fires burn without consuming, and the drowned feast forever in his underwater kingdom. Most of the tales are sailors' nonsense, stories to pass the time during long voyages. But there are things in these waters that don't have easy explanations. The glow pulses gently, like a slow heartbeat, and you find yourself staring at it with a mixture of curiosity and unease. The Iron Islands are old, far older than the history's record, and the sea around them is full of mysteries that the masters in their towers prefer to dismiss as superstition. But when you're alone on the water, with nothing but a wooden boat between yourself and the vast depths, superstition starts to feel like common sense. You finish hauling in your net and move away from the glowing patch, though you note its location carefully. Some things are better left undisturbed, and some knowledge comes with a price higher than the value of the learning. The sea has moods, and wisdom lies in recognizing when it wants to be left alone. The sun reaches its highest point, such as it ever does through the perpetual haze that hangs over the Iron Islands, and you pause for lunch. Bread and cheese, and a skin of watered wine, simple food that tastes better than any feast when eaten on a successful fishing day. You sit in the bow of the stubborn lass, feeling her gentle motion as she rides the swells, and let your eyes roam across the seascape. From here, the Iron Islands look like what they are, the peaks of underwater mountains that rise from the sea floor to break the surface and defy the waves. The water around them tells the story of countless storms, countless battles between wind and wave and stone. Dark patches mark underwater reefs where many ships have found their graves, while lighter areas show where the sea floor rises closer to the surface. To the east, barely visible through the haze, you can make out the mainland of Westeros, where people worry about things like politics and fashion, and whether their wine is properly chilled. The Iron Islands have little patience for such concerns. Here, life is reduced to its essentials: survival, family, and the eternal struggle against the sea that gives life with one hand while taking it away with the other. You think about your place in this ancient rhythm, this dance between human ambition and natural force that has played out here for thousands of years. Your father was a fisherman, and his father before him, stretching back through generations to the first Iron Islanders who looked at these inhospitable rocks and decided they could build a life here. It's not an easy life, but it's honest work that provides for your needs and connects you to something larger than yourself. The afternoon brings a change in the weather, as afternoon often does in these waters. The wind picks up, sending larger swells rolling across the surface and making the stubborn lass work harder to maintain her position. You can smell rain in the air, that particular metallic scent that precedes a storm, mixed with the ozone of lightning still miles away. You decide to make one more cast before heading for harbor. There's a spot you know, an underwater valley, where the fish sometimes gather when the weather is changing. It's risky. Deeper water means larger waves and stronger currents, but the potential reward is worth the gamble. The net goes over the side again, sinking into water that's turned from blue-green to dark grey as the clouds thicken overhead. You let it sink deeper than usual, playing out more lines to reach the bottom of the underwater valley. The boat rocks more noticeably now, and you have to brace yourself against the rail to maintain your balance. When you haul in the net this time, the weight nearly pulls you overboard. Whatever you've caught is heavy beyond anything you've experienced, dragging against your efforts with a strength that makes your arms burn and your back ache. For a moment, you wonder if you've somehow hooked a sleeping kraken, and you consider cutting the line before whatever's down there decides to wake up and take notice. But the pull feels different from a living creature, more steady, less frantic. You continue hauling, hand over hand, your muscles screaming in protest. Sweat mixes with spray on your face despite the cool air, and you have to pause several times to rest your aching arms. When the net finally breaks the surface, you understand the weight. Along with another good catch of fish, your net has brought up something that shouldn't be there. A chest, encrusted with coral and seaweed, its metal fittings green with verdigris, but still intact. It's not large, perhaps the size of a loaf of bread, but it's heavy with the weight of metal and whatever contents it might still hold. Your first thought is of treasure, the eternal dream of everyone who makes their living from the sea. Shipwrecks are common in these waters, claimed by storms or reefs or simple bad luck, and the sea sometimes gives up their secrets years or decades later. But experience has taught you to be cautious about unexpected gifts from the depths. The sea rarely gives anything away without expecting something in return. You manage to get both the fish and the chest aboard, though the effort leaves you exhausted and the weather is clearly deteriorating. The wind has picked up to a steady blow, and the first fat raindrops are beginning to fall. Time to head for home while the heading is still possible. The journey back to harbour is more challenging than the morning's easy sail out. The stubborn lass bucks and rolls as she fights through increasingly large swells, her bow throwing spray back across the deck. You have to constantly adjust the sail and rudder to maintain your course, while keeping one eye on the mysterious chest you've brought up from the depths. As you near the harbour, you can see other boats already tied securely to their moorings, their crews having made the same decision to seek shelter before the weather turns truly nasty. The lighthouse on the point flashes its warning beam across water that's now white-capped and angry, and you feel a familiar relief at the sight of solid stone and protected water. Getting the stubborn lass secured takes longer than usual in the rough conditions, but eventually she's tied safely to her mooring with extra lines to handle the storm that's clearly coming. You transfer your catch to the fish market, where the day's buyers are still waiting despite the threatening weather. The large sea bass draws admiring comments and a good price, while the rest of the catch sells quickly to customers who know that fresh fish might be scarce for the next few days if the storm is as bad as it looks. The mysterious chest you keep to yourself, wrapped in canvas and carried carefully up the path to your cottage. Whatever secrets it holds can wait until you're safe and dry. and have had time to think about what you've found. The Iron Islands are full of stories about treasure brought up from the depths, and not all of them end well for the finder. Back in your cottage, with the door barred against the rising wind and a fire crackling in the hearth, you finally have a chance to examine your find properly. The chest is old, that much is clear. Its wood dark with age and seawater, but still solid. The metal fittings are bronze rather than iron, green with corrosion, but still strong. There's a lock, but it's so corroded that it falls apart when you touch it. Inside, wrapped in what was once oiled leather, but is now just rotting scraps, you find several items that make your heart race with excitement and unease in equal measure. Coins, certainly. Pieces of gold and silver in designs you don't recognize, bearing symbols and faces that seem to shift in the firelight. A necklace of black pearls, each one perfect and lustrous despite their long immersion. And strangest of all, a piece of carved stone that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, covered in symbols that hurt your eyes to look at directly. You sit back on your heels, staring at the contents of the chest and feeling the weight of discovery and responsibility. These are clearly valuable, but they're also clearly old. Older perhaps than the Iron Islands themselves. Artifacts from some long-forgotten time when the world was different and the rules that govern it now hadn't yet been written. The storm arrives in earnest as you're pondering what to do with your find. Wind howling around the cottage like a living thing, trying to find a way inside. Rain lashes the windows with drops so large they sound like pebbles hitting the glass. The sea roars its displeasure at some cosmic injustice, sending waves crashing against the cliffs with a violence that makes the stone cottage shiver. You bank the fire and settle into your chair, the mysterious artifacts spread on the table before you, and listen to the storm rage outside. This is the other side of life in the Iron Islands, the price paid for the independence and self-reliance that make the Ironborn who they are. When the storms come, you endure them alone, trusting in stone walls and your own preparation to see you through to morning. The wind shifts and howls, and in its voice you hear the echo of ancient songs, the cries of ships long lost and sailors long drowned. The storm speaks in the language of the sea itself, telling stories of depths and distances, of creatures that live in places where sunlight never reaches, and currents that flow through underwater mountains and valleys. You find yourself thinking about the glowing patch of water you saw earlier, and wondering if it's connected somehow to the chest you've brought up from the depths. The Iron Islands are full of such mysteries, places where the boundary between the natural and supernatural grows thin and strange things become possible. The old stories speak of the drowned gods' halls beneath the waves, but they also tell of older powers, things that were ancient when the first Ironborn arrived and claimed these rocks as their home. The storm continues through the night, but inside your cottage, you're warm and dry and safe. The fire burns steadily, casting dancing shadows on the walls, while outside the wind and rain do their work of reshaping the world. By morning, the beaches will be littered with new treasures and new mysteries washed up from the depths, and life will continue in its eternal cycle of storm and calm, loss and discovery. You drowse in your chair, lulled by the sound of rain on stone and wind in the eaves, the mysterious artifacts keeping their silent vigil on the table, Whatever secrets they hold can wait for daylight and clearer thinking. Tonight, it's enough to be warm and safe, while the storm spends its fury against stone that has withstood 10,000 such nights and will withstand 10,000 more. The storm passes before dawn, as storms often do, leaving behind a world washed clean and strangely quiet. You wake to sunlight streaming through your windows, the first clear sunlight you've seen in days. Outside, the sea has returned to its normal restless calm, swells rolling in from the deep ocean, but no longer trying to climb the cliffs and drag the land back down into the depths. You dress and step outside to assess the damage, finding it less than you feared. A few loose stones blown from walls, some seaweed scattered inland by the wind, and the usual collection of debris washed up on the beaches. The harbour is intact, the boats still secure at their moorings, though they'll need careful inspection before they're safe to take out again. The other fishermen are already stirring, emerging from their homes to check their boats and equipment. You exchange waves and shouts across the harbour, the camaraderie of people who have survived another storm together. Jorik Ironhooks waves from his boat, where he's checking his rigging for damage. Mara Saltdaughter calls out that the weather should be fair for the next few days. Prime fishing time after the storm has stirred up the sea and brought fish closer to the surface. You return to your cottage and the mystery of the chest, examining the artifacts again in the clear morning light. The coins are definitely old, their designs unlike anything you've seen in the markets of the Iron Islands or the ports of the mainland. The black pearls seem to glow with their own inner light, each one a perfect sphere that captures and holds the sunlight. The carved stone remains disturbing, its surface covered with symbols that seem to move when you're not looking directly at them. After careful consideration, you decide to take the artifacts to old Meister Qyburn, who serves the minor lord of a nearby keep and has a reputation for knowledge of ancient things. If anyone can tell you what you found and what it might mean, it would be him. The alternative, trying to sell the artifacts without knowing their true nature, seems both dangerous and potentially wasteful. The journey to the keep takes you along coastal paths, worn smooth by generations of travellers, past fishing villages and small farms carved from the rocky soil. The Iron Islands may be harsh, but they're also beautiful in their own stark way. All black stone and grey sea, and the kind of scenery that makes a person appreciate the basic elements of the world. Meister Qyburn is a thin, elderly man with eyes that seem to look through you rather than at you, and a mind that holds more knowledge than any one person should probably possess. He examines your artifacts with the careful attention of someone who has seen many strange things and learned to take nothing for granted. Interesting, he murmurs, turning the carved stone over in his hands. Very interesting indeed. These symbols, they're older than the conquest, older than the faith of the Seven. Pre-Valyrian, I would say, perhaps from the time of the first men, or even before. He looks up at you with those penetrating eyes. Where did you say you found these? You tell him about the fishing expedition and the net that brought up more than just fish, and he nods thoughtfully. The sea gives up its secrets reluctantly, he says, but when it does, they're usually significant. These artifacts, they're not just valuable, they're historically important. The stone, in particular, I've seen references to such things in the oldest texts, but never an actual example. He pauses, seeming to weigh his words carefully. I would advise caution, young fisherman. Knowledge this old often comes with responsibilities, and power this ancient doesn't always recognize the boundaries we consider important. If you're wise, you'll treat these artifacts with respect and perhaps consider whether they belong in private hands or somewhere they can be properly studied and protected. You spend the rest of the day in the keep's library, looking through ancient texts and trying to understand what you've stumbled upon. The references are fragmentary and often contradictory, but a picture gradually emerges of a time when the world was different, when magic was more common and the barriers between the natural and supernatural were thinner. The carved stone, according to one crumbling scroll, is called a dreaming stone, used by ancient practitioners to communicate across vast distances or peer into hidden places. The black pearls are mentioned in connection with underwater kingdoms and the creatures that rule them. The coins bear the symbols of dynasties that fell before the written histories began. By evening, you've learned enough to know that you've found something significant, but not enough to know what you should do about it. The master's advice about caution seems increasingly wise, but you also feel the weight of responsibility that comes with such a discovery. These artifacts have been lost beneath the waves for centuries or millennia. What right do you have to decide their fate? You return to your cottage as the sun sets, painting the sea in shades of gold and red that make the water look like molten metal. The evening is calm and beautiful, a perfect end to a day of revelations and difficult decisions. You prepare a simple dinner and sit at your table, the artifacts arranged before you like pieces of a puzzle you're not sure you want to solve. As night falls, you find yourself drawn to the carved stone, its surface seeming to pulse with a faint inner light in the gathering darkness. The symbols carved into its surface seem more active now, shifting and changing when you are not looking directly at them. You resist the urge to touch it, remembering the master's warnings about ancient power and its unpredictable nature. Instead, you wrap the artifacts carefully in cloth and place them in a secure box where they can wait while you decide what to do with them. Some decisions can't be rushed, and this is clearly one of them. The sea has kept these secrets for longer than human memory. They can wait a little longer while you figure out how to honor both their significance and your own safety. You bank the fire and prepare for bed, listening to the familiar sounds of the sea against the cliffs and the wind through the eaves. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and new decisions, but tonight it's enough to be warm and safe and alive in a world that still holds mysteries worth discovering. As you drift towards sleep, you think about the eternal rhythm of the sea, the way it gives and takes according to laws older than human understanding. You're part of that rhythm now, a fisherman who casts his nets wide enough to catch more than fish. Whether that's a blessing or a curse remains to be seen, but either way, it's your story now, written in salt water and starlight on the endless pages of the sea. The waves whisper against the shore, telling stories in a language older than words, and you sleep to their ancient lullaby, dreaming of treasures hidden in the depths and the patient eyes of fish who know secrets that the surface world has forgotten. The Iron Islands hold you in their stony embrace, and the sea rocks you to sleep like a child in its mother's arms, promising that tomorrow will bring new tides, new mysteries, and new chances to cast your nets into the vast, unknowable depths where all stories begin and end. The morning after your discovery dawns clear and still, the kind of day that makes the Iron Islands look almost welcoming. If you squint and ignore the jagged rocks and the fact that even the seabirds seem to have attitude problems. You wake early, as fishermen do, your internal clock calibrated to tides and weather, rather than the civilized concerns of people who sleep past sunrise. The artifacts sit in their box like sleeping serpents, radiating a sense of importance that makes your small cottage feel suddenly cramped. You've made your decision during the night, in that strange space between sleep and waking, where the best and worst ideas tend to flourish. The carved stone and its companions need to be returned to the sea, not because you're superstitious, though any sensible person who makes their living from the water maintains a healthy respect for things that go bump in the depths, but because some responsibilities are too large for one person to carry alone. But first, there's fishing to be done. The sea doesn't pause for mysterious discoveries or existential dilemmas, and neither do the people who depend on its bounty for their daily bread. You dress in your usual layers, check the weather with the automatic thoroughness of someone whose life depends on reading the sky correctly, and prepare for another day of the eternal dance between human ambition and aquatic indifference. The harbour is busier than usual, filled with boats preparing to take advantage of the calm conditions after yesterday's storm. Storms often bring fish closer to the surface, stirring up the nutrients that form the base of the ocean's food chain and creating opportunities for those brave or foolish enough to venture out when the weather clears. The other fishermen move with the focused energy of people who know that good conditions are temporary gifts, not to be wasted. "Morning, Torrin," calls Jorik Ironhooks from his boat, where he's loading an impressive array of nets that look like they could catch a whale if properly deployed. "Heard you had some luck yesterday before the blow hit. Mara says the fish should be biting today. Something about the way the water's moving after the storm." You nod and exchange the usual pleasantries about weather and tides, the kind of conversation that serves as both greeting and information exchange among people who make their living from the sea's moods. Jorik mentions seeing dolphins to the south, always a good sign for fishing, while Balan Netmender reports that the tides are running strong but steady, perfect for net fishing in the deeper waters. The stubborn lass welcomes you aboard with her familiar creaks and sighs, settling slightly as you step onto her deck. She's dried out nicely from yesterday's soaking, her wood bleached almost white by salt and sun, and she feels eager to be moving again after a night tied to the dock. You cast off her mooring lines and push away from the harbour, feeling that familiar moment of transition as the boat meets the open water and becomes, once again, your floating home. Today's fishing takes you to different waters, following a hunch based on the way the birds are behaving and the subtle colour changes in the sea that speak of underwater currents and hidden abundance. The Iron Islands are surrounded by fishing grounds that have supported the local population for thousands of years, each area with its own character and seasons, its own moods and mysteries. You work steadily through the morning, your nets bringing up good catches of the fish that form the backbone of the island's economy. cod and herring, sardines and mackerel, the honest fish that feed families and fill market stalls. It's satisfying work, requiring skill and patience, and the kind of intuitive understanding of natural rhythms that can't be taught from books. As the sun climbs higher, painting the sea in shades of blue and green that have no names in any language, you find your thoughts returning to the artifacts hidden in your cottage. The carved stone in particular haunts your imagination, its surface covered with symbols that seem to shift and change when you're not looking directly at them. The Meister's words about ancient power and modern responsibilities echo in your mind like the sound of waves in a sea cave. You pause in your work to eat lunch, bread and cheese and dried fruit, simple food that tastes better when eaten on the deck of a boat with the sun on your face and the sea stretching to the horizon in all directions. A pod of dolphins appears in the distance, their dark shapes cutting through the water with the effortless grace of creatures perfectly adapted to their environment. They surface and dive in perfect synchronization, and you watch them with the appreciation of someone who understands what it means to be at home in a challenging world. The afternoon brings a change in the wind, a subtle shift that experienced fishermen learn to read like text on a page. The breeze picks up from the southwest, carrying with it the scent of deeper waters and the promise of different fishing conditions. You adjust your plans accordingly, moving to waters where the new wind patterns might drive schools of fish closer to the surface. It's in these deeper waters that you encounter something that makes you question whether returning the artifacts to the sea is as simple as you thought. A ship appears on the horizon, moving under both sail and oar with the purposeful progress of something that knows exactly where it's going. At first, you assume it's a trading vessel or perhaps a patrol ship from one of the major islands. But as it draws closer, you realize it's something else entirely. The ship is old, far older than anything that should still be seaworthy. Its hull black with age and decorated with carvings that seem to move in the shifting light. Its sails are patched and repatched, creating a patchwork pattern that tells the story of long voyages and the hard weather. But it's the crew that makes your blood run cold. Figures that move with unnatural stillness, their faces hidden beneath hoods that seem to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship passes within 100 yards of the stubborn lass, close enough for you to see the details that confirm your growing suspicion that this is no ordinary vessel. The crew moves without speaking, working the rigging with the coordinated precision of people who have had centuries to perfect their skills. Their ship cuts through the water without creating the usual wake, as if it exists in the world but isn't quite part of it. One of the hooded figures turns toward your boat, and though you can't see its face, you feel the weight of its attention, like a physical thing. For a moment that seems to stretch into eternity, you're locked in some kind of silent communication with something that might once have been human, but clearly isn't anymore. Then the ship passes on, continuing its mysterious journey towards some destination that exists beyond the maps of the living world. You sit in your boat for long minutes. After the strange ship disappears, your hand shaking slightly as you try to process what you've seen. The Iron Islands are full of stories about ghost ships and cursed vessels, sailors' tales told around fires on stormy nights to pass the time and spook the gullible. But seeing one in broad daylight, close enough to count the patches on its ancient sails, is an entirely different experience. The encounter changes your perspective on the artifacts you've found. They're not just valuable antiquities or interesting curiosities. They're connected to forces and powers that still exist in the world, still sail the seas in ships that shouldn't be able to float and serve purposes that the living world has forgotten. The responsibility you felt before takes on new weight and urgency. You finish your fishing with distracted efficiency, your mind churning with questions and possibilities. The catch is good, but you barely notice. Your attention focused on the horizon where the ghost ship disappeared and the implications of its appearance so soon after your discovery of the underwater chest. The journey back to harbour takes you past the spot where you found the artifacts, and you pause there, letting the stubborn lass drift while you stare down into the green-black water. Somewhere beneath the surface lies the underwater valley, where your net brought up more than just fish, and you find yourself wondering what else might be down there, what other secrets the sea holds in its deepest places. The water is calm and clear enough to see deeper than usual into the underwater landscape. Kelp forests sway in the current like underwater trees, their fronds moving in rhythm with the waves above. Schools of small fish dart between the kelp like silver birds, while larger shapes move in the deeper shadows, predators and prey locked in the eternal dance of survival that plays out in every environment from the surface to the deepest trenches. As you watch, something moves in the depths, something too large and too purposeful to be a fish. It passes through the kelp forest like a shadow, barely visible but unmistakably there, and you catch a glimpse of something that might be scales or might be metal, something that reflects the filtered sunlight in patterns too regular to be natural. You don't linger to get a better look. Some mysteries are meant to remain mysteries, and some knowledge comes with prices that are too high to pay. You start the engine, a small, reliable motor that you use when the wind fails or when you need to move quickly, and head for home, leaving the underwater valley and its secrets behind. The harbour welcomes you with its familiar sounds and smells, the creak of boats at their moorings, the calls of seabirds hoping for scraps, the voices of fishermen comparing their catches and planning tomorrow's expeditions. You tie up the stubborn lass and transfer your catch to the market, where the day's buyers are waiting with the patient attention of people who know that fresh fish is worth waiting for. The large cod you caught draws appreciative comments and good prices, while the smaller fish sell quickly to local families planning their evening meals. It's honest work producing honest income, the kind of transaction that has kept the Iron Islands economy running for thousands of years. But your mind is elsewhere, focused on the box of artifacts waiting in your cottage and the decision you need to make about their fate. You take your time walking home, following the winding path that climbs from the harbour to the cliff top where your cottage sits. The evening is beautiful, with the sun setting behind clouds that paint the sky in shades of gold and red and purple that would make a master painter weep with envy. The sea reflects the sky's colours, creating a mirror image that doubles the beauty and makes the whole world seem like something from a dream. Your cottage feels different when you enter it, charged with the presence of the artifacts, like the air before a thunderstorm. The box sits where you left it, innocuous looking, but radiating a sense of importance that fills the room. You light a fire and prepare a simple dinner, trying to maintain the normal rhythms of daily life while your mind grapples with questions that have no easy answers. As night falls, you find yourself drawn to the box, despite your better judgment. The artifacts seem to call to you, not with any supernatural compulsion, but with the simple magnetism of mystery and possibility. You remove them from their wrappings and arrange them on your table, studying them in the firelight as if prolonged examination might reveal secrets that daylight couldn't illuminate. The carved stone pulses with that same faint inner light, its symbols shifting and changing in patterns that almost make sense before dissolving back into incomprehensibility. The black pearls seem to absorb the firelight, each one a perfect sphere of darkness shot through with veins of silver. The coins catch and reflect the light in ways that make their ancient faces seem alive, expressions changing as the flames dance. You reach for the carved stone, then stop yourself, remembering the master's warnings about ancient power and unpredictable consequences. But the temptation is strong, stronger than it should be, perhaps, which is itself a warning sign. Objects of power often have ways of making themselves seem attractive to potential users, and wisdom lies in recognizing when desire might be artificially enhanced. Instead of touching the stone, you settle back in your chair and simply observe, letting your eyes roam over the artifacts while your mind processes what you've learned and experienced. The ghost ship, the movement in the underwater valley, the sense of being watched and evaluated. All of it points to a world that exists alongside the mundane reality of fishing and storms and daily survival. A world where ancient powers still move and act according to their own mysterious purposes. The fire burns lower, casting longer shadows across the room, and you find yourself thinking about the nature of responsibility. You didn't ask to find these artifacts, didn't seek out the mysteries they represent, but they found you nonetheless. The question is what to do with that burden, how to honor both the significance of your discovery and your own limitations as a simple fisherman who just wanted to catch enough fish to make a living. The decision, when it comes, feels less like a choice than like a recognition of something that was always inevitable. The artifacts don't belong to you. They belong to the sea, to the ancient powers that created them and the forces that have preserved them through centuries of submersion. Your role is not to possess them, but to serve as their temporary guardian, protecting them until they can be returned to their proper place. But returning them isn't as simple as dropping them overboard and hoping for the best. They came to you for a reason, brought up by nets cast in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The sea doesn't give up its secrets randomly, and the timing of their discovery, so soon after your encounter with mysteries and strange lights, suggests a purpose beyond mere chance. You bank the fire and prepare for bed, leaving the artifacts on the table where you can see them. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and new decisions. But tonight, it's enough to have reached some kind of understanding about your role in this unfolding mystery. You're not the hero of this story. You're the messenger, the bridge between the ancient world that created these objects and the modern world that has forgotten their significance. Sleep comes eventually, filled with dreams of deep water and distant lights, of ships that sail between worlds and creatures that remember times when magic was as common as sunlight. You dream of the carved stone speaking in languages older than human memory, of the black pearls opening like eyes to reveal visions of underwater kingdoms, of the coins spinning in endless circles while ancient faces whisper secrets in the darkness. The morning brings clarity and purpose. You wake knowing exactly what you need to do. The decision made in the space between sleep and waking, where the deepest truths often reveal themselves. The artifacts need to be returned to the sea, but not randomly. They need to go back to the specific place where they were found. Return to the underwater valley where they've waited for centuries for someone trustworthy enough to serve as their guardian. You dress with unusual care, choosing your best clothes for what feels like a ceremonial occasion. The artifacts are wrapped carefully in their cloth, then placed in a waterproof bag that will protect them during the journey back to their resting place. The carved stone feels warm through the cloth, as if it's aware of what's about to happen and approves of your decision. The stubborn lass seems to understand the importance of the day's mission, sitting lower in the water as if she's carrying cargo heavier than its physical weight would suggest. You cast off from the harbour in the early morning light, when the sea is calm and the air is still. Perfect conditions for the delicate work ahead. The journey to the underwater valley takes longer than usual, not because of distance, but because you find yourself moving with unusual care, checking and rechecking your course to ensure you find the exact spot where the artifacts were discovered. The sea looks different in the morning light, its surface reflecting the sky in patterns that seem to shift and change as you watch. When you reach the valley, you drop anchor and prepare for what feels like the most important fishing expedition of your life. But instead of lowering nets to catch something, you're preparing to return something to the depths from which it came. The waterproof bag containing the artifacts sits beside you, heavy with more than just physical weight. You open the bag and remove the artifacts, unwrapping them for one final look. In the clear morning light, they seem almost to glow with their own inner fire, the carved stone pulsing gently, while the black pearls shimmer with depths that seem to contain entire universes. The coins spin slowly in your palm, as if moved by currents that exist in dimensions beyond the physical. One by one, you return them to the sea. The coins go first, spinning as they fall through the green water until they disappear into the depths. The black pearls follow, sinking like drops of liquid night toward the bottom of the valley. Finally, the carved stone, which seems to pulse more brightly as it approaches the water's surface, before disappearing with barely a splash. For a moment, nothing happens. The sea remains calm, the morning peaceful, and you begin to wonder if you've made a terrible mistake. Then the water begins to glow, not with the harsh light of fire, but with the soft radiance of moonlight on snow. The glow spreads outward from the point where the stone disappeared, creating patterns that seem to write themselves across the surface of the sea. From the depths, something rises, not breaking the surface, but approaching it, visible through the clear water, as a shape too large and too complex to be any natural creature. It moves with the slow grace of something that has all the time in the world, ascending from the depths like a cathedral made of light and water. You watch in awe as the shape resolves itself into something recognizable yet impossible. A building, or perhaps a ship, constructed from materials that seem to be part living coral and part worked stone. Towers and spires rise from its central structure, connected by bridges that arch gracefully through the water. Windows glow with the same soft light that emanated from the carved stone, and through them you can see movement, figures that might once have been human but have been transformed by centuries beneath the waves. The structure pauses just below the surface, close enough for you to see details that confirm your growing understanding of what you've witnessed. This is one of the drowned gods' halls, the underwater kingdom spoken of in the oldest songs, where those who die at sea are said to feast eternally in chambers filled with light that burns without consuming. A figure approaches one of the windows, tall and graceful with flowing hair that moves like seaweed in the current. It raises a hand in what might be a greeting or blessing, and you feel a warmth spread through your chest, a sense of approval and gratitude that needs no words to communicate its meaning. The artifacts have been returned to their rightful place, and the ancient powers that created them are pleased with your service. Slowly, majestically, the underwater palace begins to descend, sinking back into the depths from which it rose. The glow fades gradually, leaving only normal seawater and the memory of something too beautiful and strange to be easily forgotten. But you know that it's still there, waiting in the depths. One of the many mysteries that make the ocean more than just a body of water. You sit in the stubborn lass for a long time after the vision fades, trying to process what you've seen and what it means. The sea looks normal again, blue-green water stretching to the horizon, but you know that beneath its surface lie wonders and terrors beyond human comprehension. You've been privileged to see one of them, to serve as a bridge between the surface world and the depths, and the responsibility of that privilege will stay with you for the rest of your life. The journey back to harbour passes in contemplative silence, the stubborn lass cutting through calm waters while you think about the nature of mystery and revelation. Some secrets are meant to be shared, told and retold until they become legends that inspire and warn future generations. Others are meant to be held quietly, treasured memories that change the holder without necessarily changing the world. Your encounter with the underwater palace falls into the second category. It's too strange and too personal to share casually, too important to trivialize with careless telling. Instead, it becomes part of you, a memory that will color every sunset and inform every cast of the net, a reminder that the world contains wonders beyond the reach of ordinary experience. The harbor welcomes you back with its familiar bustle of boats and voices, fishermen preparing for another day's work or returning from successful expeditions. You tie up the stubborn lass and go through the motions of a normal day, checking your gear, planning tomorrow's fishing, exchanging gossip and weather predictions with your fellow fishermen. But underneath the routine activities, you carry the knowledge of what you've seen and done, a secret that makes the ordinary world seem both more precious and more fragile. That evening, you sit in your cottage with a simple dinner and a cup of ale, watching the sun set over water that holds secrets beyond counting. The box that once contained the artifacts sits empty on your shelf, a reminder of the brief time when you served as guardian to objects of power and mystery. Tomorrow will bring new tides and new challenges, but tonight it's enough to be warm and safe and blessed with the memory of wonders. The sea whispers against the cliffs below, telling stories in a language older than the words, and you listen with the understanding of someone who has seen behind the veil that separates the mundane from the miraculous. The Iron Islands hold you in their rocky embrace, and the ocean rocks you to sleep with the ancient lullaby of waves and wind, promising that there are always more mysteries waiting in the depths for those brave enough to cast their nets wide and deep. Your dreams are filled with underwater palaces and figures of grace and power, with lights that burn beneath the waves and treasures that choose their own guardians. You sleep the sleep of someone who has fulfilled a great responsibility and earned the approval of forces older than human memory, secure in the knowledge that you have played your small part in the vast, ongoing story of the sea and its secrets. And in the depths below, where sunlight never reaches and pressure creates diamonds from carbon, the returned artifacts rest in their proper place, waiting for the next chapter in their long story to unfold. The carved stone pulses gently in the darkness. The black pearls glow with inner fire, and the ancient coin spins slowly in currents that flow between worlds, all of them safe in the keeping of powers that remember when the world was young and magic was as common as the air itself. The Iron Islands sleep under a blanket of stars, their rocky shores caressed by waves that carry whispers of eternity, and somewhere in the depths, the drowned god's halls burn with light that will never fade, filled with the echoes of ancient songs and the promise of mysteries yet to be revealed to those worthy of their trust. The day's threads are woven, the dye has dried, and the castle sighs into silence. If tonight's tale soothed your spirit, or made you grin like a servant spotting a noble tripping on their own cloak, feel free to like and subscribe. No rush. My self-worth isn't pinned to gold embroidery. Until next time, may your sleep be gentle, your thoughts light, and your dreams stitched with wonder.